Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of Web3 Valley. Unfortunately, today Praveen was not able to join the call today. So it's only me today, and we will be diving into what is Bitcoin. So without further ado, let's get into the topic. What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is nothing but a payment network, right? It is like your payment network of Visa and MasterCard, where the only difference is with Visa and MasterCard, they act as payment rails to facilitate transactions on any fiat currencies, whether it be dollar, rupee, pound. So it acts as a payment rail to transfer payment from the bank to the merchant. When it comes to Bitcoin network, in a Bitcoin network, you could only have Bitcoin being transferred from a merchant to a seller. And we can only do a payment through Bitcoin, and no Bitcoin network cannot support any other currency. Though there are NFTs that have been launched recently. For this episode, we will strictly talk about Bitcoin being a payment network. It is also borderless and it is global. Let's dive into let's move ahead. And if you look at, let's compare a bank transfer to Bitcoin. So let's assume that you have a friend in America and you are trying to transfer payment from your bank in India to the recipient's bank in America. And if you look at the first figure, you will notice that there are intermediary banks that are involved in having these payment processed, and it also takes a couple of days for the payment to be settled. And it also the banks also charge some transaction fees, anything around anywhere between $20 to $60 in settling your payment. And when it comes to Bitcoin, you can, if you have a Bitcoin wallet, and if you have a Bitcoin or less than a Bitcoin in your Bitcoin wallet, you can have Bitcoin directly transferred from your Bitcoin wallet to your, and if your friend in America also has a Bitcoin wallet, if he or she shares the Bitcoin wallet address with you, you can directly transfer the Bitcoin from your wallet to your friend's wallet. And if you notice here, there are no intermediaries. It is a direct settlement and it takes less than an hour. There is a charge that you'll have to pay to the miners. We will talk about miners in the next few slides. I mean, again, it completely depends. If you want to pay them, you can pay some transaction fees. Otherwise, there will be there will be a reward that will be given to miners for recording this transaction. So we'll talk about miners in the next few slides. So how does the transaction? Let's just talk about transaction processing for a moment. So here we have a transaction processed by a bank and a transaction processed by a Bitcoin. So when it comes to transaction being processed by a bank, it actually gets recorded in private individual's ledger. When it comes to Bitcoin, it is recorded on a block and it is on a public ledger. It's not a private ledger, it's on a public ledger. And what about security when it comes to bank? Bank has to take the ownership of making sure that the transaction is recorded in the private ledger and it is kept hack proof. So it is the responsibility of the bank. But when it comes to Bitcoin, it is the responsibility of the miners to make sure that the transaction is recorded on the block and the public ledger is also secure, right? And maintaining security going forward, making sure that transaction is recorded and kept securely on the file and there is no tampering that happens, it is the bank's responsibility as well. But when it comes to Bitcoin, it is the integrity of the data on Bitcoin blockchain, maintaining the security of the data on Bitcoin blockchain is the responsibility of the miners on the network. We will, as I mentioned earlier, we will talk about mining in the next few slides. And as and when the miners mine these blocks, the miners get rewarded in Bitcoin. But when it comes to recording transaction for a bank, there is no direct fees as such. Right, let's move ahead. What are the 10 promises of a blockchain or a Bitcoin, right? So promise number one is security. As I mentioned earlier, in blockchain, there are in a public blockchain, the transactions are recorded on a public ledger, and it is important that the security of the public ledger is maintained. So they promise security. Promise number two is access control. So you have the ability to choose, as a user of the blockchain, you have the ability to show the data to people whom you are interested to, whom you want to, right? So you have the ability to showcase, or if you want to keep it anonymous, you could do that. So there is complete access control. Promise number three, there is transparency. So on a blockchain, because on a public blockchain, because the transactions are recorded on a public blockchain, the transactions are transparent. Traceability, meaning there is complete the audit history in terms of when was the new Bitcoin wallet downloaded, date, how many Bitcoins did the wallet buy, how many Bitcoins does the wallet have, how many Bitcoins did they transfer, how many Bitcoin did they receive, etc., etc. Everything is auditable on the public blockchain. Promise number five, it is borderless. It cannot be restricted to any country. It is available on the internet, and you can transfer Bitcoins anywhere across the world, right? There are no intermediaries. So as we saw in the previous example, in case of a bank settlement, there are number of intermediaries that are involved, but when it comes to Bitcoin, there are no intermediaries. You can directly settle the payment from one Bitcoin wallet to another Bitcoin wallet. So when there are no intermediaries, obviously promise number 7, 8, 9 gets taken care of, because there is a reduction in cost, speed, and efficiency comes with it. Promise number 10, which is the most important, or at least I am excited about, promise number 10 is data ownership. Like how you own land and other assets in physical world, because we browse and spend so much time on the internet, a blockchain gives us the ability to own our data. So what do I mean by that? I mean, when you browse the data, there is a browsing history that you produce, and that browsing history is used by companies like Google, Amazon, and other big tech companies to understand your behavior, and depending on your behavior, they actually launch ads so that you could go ahead, so that there is a bigger conversion of the advertisements. So in blockchain, in Web3, your browsing history will be owned by you, and it will not be owned by any of the big tech companies. And you can then decide with whom you want to share the data, and depending on the payment that they would give you, right? So you can actually get paid for your browsing history. When we spoke about security, let's just dive a little deep into some technicals of how the security is maintained on a Bitcoin network. So when a transaction is made on a Bitcoin network, the transaction is converted into a 64-digit hexadecimal, which is nothing but a cryptographic hash. So once the transfer is made from, say, let's say Praveen transfers 1 Bitcoin to me. Let's hope he does, right? So if he does transfer 1 Bitcoin to me, then the immediate the thing that happens with a Bitcoin algorithm, it's that it converts it into a cryptographic hash, and that cryptographic hash gets recorded into a block. And once there are enough number of transactions on a block, the miner of the Bitcoin network finalizes the block by having a cryptographic hash, and also try by enhancing the security. Now, cryptographic hash itself is very secure, but Bitcoin miner further enhances the security by adding few zeros, right? It is determined by the Bitcoin protocol on how many zeros has to be added before before finalizing the block, right? So the miners actually go ahead and add number of zeros to the block and finalize the block. So when it comes to, let's talk about Bitcoin mining further. So when it comes to Bitcoin blocks, now if you assume there are 4 Bitcoin blocks, each block has a cryptographic hash. It has a previous hash, and it has a previous hash, and it has a new hash. So previous hash is from the previous block, and the new hash is the new block, right? And the next block will have the previous hash and the existing hash. The next block will have the previous hash and the new hash. Now, what do I mean by hash? Hash is nothing but an identity. It is a 64-digit hexadecimal cryptographic identity of each block, right? So it's like how we have fingerprint to identify human beings. When it comes to blockchain, it is the cryptographic hash that identifies each block, right? And each block is connected. So if from a security perspective, if somebody tries to somebody tries to hack into, say, block number 1, then all the other blocks will not be valid, because every block is connected. And if you tamper with any of the blocks, all the other blocks will become irrelevant. So that's why it is so difficult to tamper with the data on the blockchain. So let's dive a little bit deep into what is Bitcoin mining. The process of finalizing the block with the previous hash and the new hash, and with predetermined zeros. Now, that is also called as difficulty level. So if there are more miners that get into a Bitcoin network who want to finalize the blocks, then the difficulty level of mining the block increases. So if there are less number of miners, the difficulty level decreases. So from a difficulty level perspective, all that you need to think is how many zeros have to be added. If there are more number of zeros have to be added before the cryptographic hash, then there is more computing power needed by the computer to find the value that determines the exact number of zeros that need to be added to the block. All right, so the difficulty level increases as and when the number of miners increase on the network. Right, mining is done by computers with graphic cards, etc. And there are mining companies around the world, and there are listed companies in the US which are mining companies that are located in the US and listed in NASDAQ. Right. The third point is new bitcoins are rewarded to the successful. So whenever the miner spends the amount of energy that it does in order for the computation, and as and when it comes up with this value and finalizes the block and adds the block to the Bitcoin blockchain, they get rewarded in Bitcoin. Right. So currently each miner gets about 6.25 Bitcoins for finalizing the block and enhancing the security of the block and adding the block to the blockchain. It gets about 6.25 blocks. So a new block is added every 10 minutes. So it takes approximately 10 minutes to finalize a block. So every 10 minutes, there is a new block that is getting added to the Bitcoin blockchain. So new Bitcoins are released as when a new Bitcoin block is added to the network. And when it comes to rewards to miners, there is a algorithm that is set in Bitcoin network that the rewards that these miners gets halved every 4 years. So Bitcoin network started in 2009. So there was a halving cycle in 2013, then on 2017, then the 2020, 21. So the next Bitcoin halving cycle is going to happen in 2024. So anything that the miners who are mining the Bitcoin blocks after 2024, their rewards will be halved again. So currently, if they are getting 6.25 Bitcoin, they will only be getting 3.25 Bitcoin after March or April of 2024. Now, I did mention earlier in this video that I will be sharing some alpha, right? So that alpha is nothing but we'll see how Bitcoin price have behaved around the Bitcoin halving cycles, right? So the first Bitcoin halving cycle was in 2013, and before the Bitcoin halving cycle, Bitcoin price went up 5.7x, and it actually went 93.1x after the Bitcoin halving cycle. It takes about a year and a half after Bitcoin halving cycle to go to the top value, right? Similarly, if you look at 2021, after the Bitcoin halving cycle, which was in 2020, the price went up by 7.8x, right? So going by the previous data, there is a venture capital firm called Pentera Capital. They have come up with the estimated price of Bitcoin in 2024 and 2025. So next halving cycle is going to happen in 2024. So as per this chart, the Bitcoin price should go up to 35,638 before the Bitcoin cycle, and after the Bitcoin halving cycle, the price should go up to 1,48,636. Right? Again, this is just for educational purposes. There is no guarantee that the price will go up or not. You must be smart enough to understand that the future price is not dependent on the past. But this is all my idea here is to walk you through what has happened in the past and what might happen in the future. Right? So who invented Bitcoin? So a person called Satoshi Nakamoto, he invented, he or she or a group, we don't know. He continues to remain anonymous. So a person called Satoshi Nakamoto invented this beautiful technology. He was apparently unhappy with the bailouts that happened after 2008 financial crisis. I was unhappy with the fact that banks actually didn't tell the truth to people on what they did with their money. So he came up with this concept of Bitcoin, where he wanted people to have a self custody of their money and not trusting anybody. Right. Um, so that's that. In conclusion, what are the pros? From a positive, from an advantages perspective? Um, Bitcoin has a hard supply of 21 million. We discussed that earlier. New Bitcoins are released as rewards for miners. Mining rewards are reduced by half now, or every 4 years, or after every 210,000 blocks. A block is produced every 10 minutes. So from January 3rd, 2009, a block has been getting added continuously every 10 minutes. So for people who doubt Bitcoin and who've been calling Bitcoin non-existence, please note that Bitcoin has been adding blocks from the year 2009 non-stop, 365 days in a year, right? 24/7, right? It just keeps adding blocks after blocks. What are the limitations of Bitcoin, right? So we spoke about Bitcoin being a payment network. So unlike Visa and MasterCard, which can process about 25,000 transactions per second, Bitcoin can only process 7 transactions per second, so which is a great limitation. Unfortunately, Bitcoin is also highly volatile. So if you want to have Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, then the Bitcoin value has to remain stable. If it continuously goes up and down in matter of hours, then it becomes not so desirable to trade. Right, or it is not very desirable to be used as a medium of exchange. The UI UX also needs to improve. The medium crypto, one of the reasons why Bitcoin is still taking time, or crypto is still taking time for adoption, is because unfortunately the user interface of crypto is not as good as Web 2. So UI UX has to improve a great deal. Last but not the least, people who don't believe in Bitcoin and traditional economists believe that the world moved away from gold standard because people wanted money for building businesses, for buying homes, cars, etc. Right, and the central banks around the world made that possible by providing enough liquidity, by giving enough money to people, and that's why the world broke away from gold standard. Right, and now if we go back to Bitcoin standard, which has a finite supply, we may experience the same slowdown, where people do not have enough money to be able to build businesses and buy homes, cars, etc. Right, so there's always an ongoing debate between believers of Bitcoin and non-believers of Bitcoin. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for the day, and thank you very much for watching the video today. And if you find this content appropriate, and if you have learned something new, please go ahead and like the content. And also, if one of the reasons why I started this channel is to spread awareness and educate people about Bitcoin. So if you find it appropriate, please feel free to share with your friends and family, and that way it will help us grow, as well as produce more videos which are relevant to Web3 and crypto. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you for being patient with me. I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.